Good afternoon. Welcome to the second program of NAWA's Living Legacy. I'm Penny Dell, NAWA member since 1992, president 2005 to 2007, and an admirer of NAWA's history and archives and all the other people that drive NAWA. Today, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to three stellar leaders: Dorothy Cochran, Bernice Feigenberg, and Janet Indick. They are all leaders who joined in the 70s. Richard Nixon was president when Janet joined in 1972. Gas lines wound round the block when Dorothy and Bernice joined in 1975. When they joined, no cell phones or computers or email. Even photocopiers and faxes were new. Long distance calls were expensive and conference phone calls were unheard of, let alone Zoom. In those almost 50 years, all three have seen NAWA's headquarters move from Union Square West to Fifth Avenue and 14th Street to West 39th Street and now to 15 Gramercy Park South. They have fearlessly taken on leadership roles and helped shape NAWA's present. Fasten your seatbelts. We're going to time travel. Okay, let me see. We're going to start with Dorothy. Dorothy will introduce Bernice, and Bernice will introduce Janet. Next slide, please. Okay, here are some pages from our catalogs which show you some of the roles that they took on. Bernice Feigenberg was first vice president, and Janet Indick was treasurer in 1997. And here is Dorothy in 1980 traveling a graphics show. Next slide, please. Here is Dorothy at work at NAWA's induction ceremony in November, new member show. She was running the Interchurch Center and sponsored many meetings there for our new members show and wonderful, wonderful exhibitions. Next slide, please. Dorothy Cochran. She's a prize-winning printmaker. She's an educator and curator. She joined NAWA in 75. By 1980, had joined the executive board. It's organizing traveling printmaking. She's the longtime gallery director at the Interchurch Center, and she selected numerous NAWA exhibitions, as I told you, including hosting our annual new members meeting. Recently on the NAWA governing board, she headed up the nominating governance committee. She's the magic responsible for connecting me and many others to NAWA and to printmaking. She currently oversees and teaches printmaking at the Montclair Art Museum's School of Art, as well as conducts workshops around the country at Manhattan Graphics Arts Center, New York City, Castle Hill Center for the Arts in Massachusetts, Maui, California, and the Art School in Demorest, New Jersey. She has added the ancient art of encaustics to her artistic mastery and practice. An active exhibition schedule completes her busy artistic life. Please make sure you see her Instagram feed at Dorothy Cochran Art. Dorothy.
Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here talking to you about NAWA. Yes, as Penny said, I joined in 1975, and I was so excited to be part of NAWA. I was very eager to get involved in the organization, and because I have a strong focus in printmaking, and this is one of my prize-winning works from back then, I was excited and eager to help NAWA go forward. So naturally, I gravitated towards working with a printmaking show that toured the entire United States. It went to small galleries, it went to colleges, it went to art centers, and it traveled for 2 years. I and many very talented women that were working in printmaking were part of it. I enjoyed that work very much. I would hope sometime in the future there would be another possibility of doing a show like that, which would travel. But every year I would nonetheless participate in NAWA's exhibitions for members and all the other shows that they had. In 1984, I received a second graduate degree at Columbia and actually found work nearby. I had a studio up at 110th Street and Broadway, and I was lucky enough to find a job at the Interchurch Center, which was on the backside of Barnard. And as the gallery director and curator there, after an initial working with them, I was able to host many NAWA shows, not only as a group, but individual members would apply, and the work was very stellar and good, and we would accept it. In addition to doing the shows, and I think we need another slide, please. Just to give you an indication of what the gallery space looked like, this is a Rockefeller building, which is still standing and present today. This was called the Treasure Room Gallery, and it was a 2,000 square foot, beautifully appointed professional gallery. This is just one of many, many shows I did there that NAWA was included in, as well as many other artists. Next slide, please. Yes, and here's a little close-up of it. And these panels could be rearranged, so we had a lot of flexibility to show all kinds of work: sculpture, painting, printmaking, artist books, etc. Next, please. And this is an indication of some of the receptions we had. People were happy, they were talking, they were looking at the artwork. Next slide, please. And once again, lots of good conversation, camaraderie, which of course we very much miss this year. Hopefully we'll get back to that in the future. Next slide. And then there were also these vitrines in the hallway that held work also. There were 10 on each side. So I think you can see we had a very active place for NAWA to show. Next slide. Now, Penny already mentioned that I also held, she has that wonderful photo in the beginning where I'm helping one of the members put slides up of new work. And we had a large lounge corporate facility meeting room, and I was able to get that for NAWA for no charge. The administration of the building at that point was very open to arts organizations and promoting women artists. And we were so lucky, and besides which we had so much fun. We had breakfast, we had provided, by the services in the building. People came and they talked, they saw the work of new members, and it was a very heady and exciting time at that point. I would say that I then joined the board of NAWA, and during that time, I was able to bring in, as chair of the nominating and governance committee, many wonderful artists that, for instance, Jill Barada, who became a wonderful president recently, and there was Joan Lewis, who was a lawyer and sat on the board, and of course our dear Penny Dell, who sits here with us now, has been involved for a long time. I would say in closing, I encourage you to join NAWA. I am showing you some of my recent work. I work in printmaking still, and I'm also added encaustic to my work. And this is a combination of hot wax and washi paper and calligraphic ink, and they're all collaged together. Next slide. And this is encaustic, but it's done on a fabric called Evalon that I've been experimenting with. Next slide. And this is a very recent work called It's the Wabi-Sabi Series, which involves the idea of impermanence. And I think we all relate to that. And right now, my work is being shown at the Providence Art Club as part of the Society of American Graphic Artists, of which I am a part. So I'd like to introduce next Bernice Feigenberg, who is not only also a longtime member, but was president and very involved around the same time I was. Bernice was president in 92 to 93. And again, she was with the same time I came in. An award winner. She's been working and helping and volunteering. And she did this when she was very young and took it on right away. She has work in the Zimmerli collection. And as I understand, today at 4 o'clock, there's going to be a showing of that Zimmerli work. Innovations have included establishing a photo computer artist, a new category. And she has had notable exhibitions in North Carolina. She is the Darke County Center of the Arts in Ohio, the DuPont Gallery in Washington, and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia. And closer to home, she's presided over 2 back-to-back shows at Concordia College in Bronxville. She has continued with her work, and she's done work of women's history at the Hutchinson's Gallery at C.W. Post College in Brookville. And she's a happy member of selling a 3-panel painting at a Nawa exhibition to a buyer from Brazil. Bravo, Bernice. And here she is.
Oh, hi.
Take it over, Bernice.
I'm still listening to Dorothy. I'm Bernice Feigenberg. I was president of the National Association of Women Artists from 1991 and 1993. I wish I still looked like that. That was a good picture. You know, I joined in 1975 and I did get involved right away. I held various positions as an officer, and then eventually I was president, but all along the way, I worked with wonderful people, and I have to tell you, I admired them very much. Before I was president, there was Peloton, which came just before me, and she was a model. She was somebody I really looked up to. So kind, so talented. She could do anything, and there were many people in the organization who were like that. Not only were they talented, but they were friendly, and they were interested in art, of course, and they were willing to help. So I want to tell you about some of the things that I did when I was president. Oh, and I'm going to show you another picture of this painting that just went on the screen. Night Blooming Cereus. It's part of a triptych. And you know what? I'm going to interrupt to show you a couple of triptychs while that is part of one. This is 96 inches. They're all big. And this is another one, 96 inches. And then here's one more. These are not going to go on the slide machine, so you wouldn't get to see them. And then somebody said, why don't you do them without curving, just straight? So I did some like this, and I could talk about it. And I've sold a number of these. But to get back to the organization, I want to tell you about something that I really remember. We would have a speaker at our luncheon every year. And one year we asked Alice Neal if she would be the speaker. And she said she would be the speaker if we would pick her up in a car and bring her there, because she had no way of getting there. So I said I would be glad to pick her up. And I went with Gail Rabb. She waited in my station wagon because we knew there wouldn't be parking. Alice Neal lived up Broadway and 104th Street. So it was kind of crowded. Anyway, I went up to her apartment. It was very exciting. She had paintings stacked up everywhere. And I recognized that there were portraits of people like Frank Sinatra and other well-known people. And the first thing she said to me was, Bernice, you're wearing those high-heeled platform shoes. You must be very short. How can you walk in them? And I said, no trouble. At that time, I had no trouble. Now, if Alice Neal said that to me today, how can you walk in the shoes? I would say, sorry, can't walk in them anymore. But anyway, there were paintings all over, and there was one of Alice Neal naked, not as a young woman, but as an old lady. And it was a little bit shocking, I think. But she was that sort of person. She was outspoken. Uh, she was funny. She was a wonderful speaker at the luncheon. Everybody loved her. And we all loved her artwork too. So that was one of the highlights of my presidency. Another thing that I want to tell you about is the time I decided to write a letter to Clinton, because we were having our 100th anniversary, and that was very special to us. We thought everybody should know about it and celebrate. So I wrote a letter by hand to Clinton, inviting him to come to one of our receptions where we're having a big art show. And lo and behold, I didn't expect an answer, but he wrote back, not by hand. It was a typewritten letter, and the signature at the bottom was probably a stamp. And that's okay. But it was very nice of him to reply. And it was on White House stationery. It said White House, and was addressed to me at my house in Long Island. And he couldn't come because he had a previous commitment. But I donated the letter to the archives of NAWA, because I thought this was an important thing for us to have, indicating that we were acknowledged by people in Washington. And so I found out the other day that they still have the letter, and I'm happy to hear that. There are a few more stories I could tell you, but I don't want to take up all the time. There's one bad thing that happened. I guess I should tell you that too. We've had our annual exhibit. At that time, we had our annual exhibit at Foley Square, big government building, very big. And we had, at the time when I was president, we had over 300 members, and that's how many people showed. And you didn't have to be jury to be in the annual exhibition. I thought that was a very good thing, because it was inviting people to be a part of us. So we're all set to bring the work in on a specific day. And the day before that we had to bring in the work, I heard on the news that the labor unions were striking, and there was going to be a big demonstration in Foley Square. And they told people not to go into the city and to stay away from that downtown area because there might be some violence. Well, we had to call everybody on the telephone and tell them not to come. We had to postpone the receiving of the artwork for another time. But the committee was terrific. We had a chain, and I had about 30 calls to make, and then those people called another 30 people each, and we got to everybody. Of course, we had complaints. Who wouldn't complain? But we managed to survive that. We did the receiving on a different day, and everything went all right. But that was the worst. But the best was so good. I loved working with all the women in NAWA. They were just wonderful. We had our monthly meetings, and we had as many as many exhibits as we could have. It was terrific, and I would suggest to you that you do the same thing. Get involved, join, show your work, and believe it or not, and that was a long time ago, 1991. But I'm still painting and working. Now, I did a lot of work in acrylic. I went to 2 art schools, Tyler, which is part of Temple University, and then I went to post-college for a master's in art education. My mother said I had to work, could just paint. But now I do, in addition to acrylic, I'm doing Asian brush painting. Let's see, I think here's the card. Something like this might be something that I would do. It's Asian, it's their ink, their special ink, and with some watercolor. And there's a whole history of that. I've had many Asian teachers, and the Asian art is wonderful, I believe, and it's influenced me greatly in my paintings. And two of the exhibits that I was in that I want to tell you about are two that I'm proud of. One was the Florence Biennale, which was an invitational exhibit, and I was in that 3 times, and I met people from all over the world. They came to Florence, and there was a wonderful show, and they had a parade, and it was lovely. And the other exhibit that I was happy to be in was in Japan. I belonged to Viridian Gallery, and one of the members was Japanese, and she arranged for us to have a show on the Ginza. The Ginza is the main street in Tokyo, where everybody wore a mask way back then, even before COVID. I couldn't understand why they were all wearing masks, but they were. Anyway, we had a lovely show there. And today I'm going to be in a show at Viridian that opens on April the 7th. For the address of Meridian is 547 West 27th Street, and the phone number is 212-414-4040. And that's going to be an East-West show. It's going to be like Eastern art and Western art. And the gallery will be open from Wednesday to Saturday, I believe, for about a month. The other thing that I'm in now, at Guildhall in East Hampton, has a show for artist members every spring, and that show is on now. And you can go into the gallery and see it. And my painting's in a good place. You see it as soon as you walk in on the left, right there. But it has some very interesting pieces. They have a size limit. You can't have anything bigger than 25 inches, but it's fun to be in. So that's another one that I'm in now. And even though I'm older now, I still want to learn new things. And I wish I had like a second life to learn more things and, combine this kind of art with that kind of art. And my paintings have some mixed up stuff in them. It could be silk screen printing or just painting or collage, different things, but there's always so much to learn. What I haven't learned yet is computer. So before too long, I hope to learn more about computer. But to get back to art, you're a very lucky person if you can spend some of your time doing artwork. It's very rewarding, and I hope you will you join NAWA and take part. And I want to thank Penny for arranging this. Now, the next artist coming up is somebody that I worked with at many meetings and shows, Janet Indick. She was very active in the NAWA. She was past president. She was past president from 1997 to 99. She's been a member since 1972. That's almost 50 years. She works with metals and other materials, and she's always been very active. In addition to being president, she was also a treasurer. In addition to the 1998 exhibit at the Zimmerli, recent acquisitions, her presidential years included the celebration of our 110th anniversary with many exhibitions and the overseeing of NAWA student scholarships administered by the Art Students League of New York, as well as many art-related NAWA lectures funded by the Esther Gaynor Speakers Fund. So here is Janet to talk to you. Hi, Janet.
Hi. Hi, this looks like a picture of the two of us
That's us working.
working. So this must have been in one of the catalogs. Yeah,
Right.
right. Very good. Okay, so this is the sculpture that won an award, and I got so excited about it because it was the first year I got into the National Association of Women Artists, and this was my second sculpture that I made. And wow, to get an award and be in the National Association of Women Artists just blew me away. And I just love the organization, and I tried to do my best. I got, my first job was the treasurer, but then I moved up, and after that, there were so many committees. There were 30 people on the board, and they would come to meetings in Union Square at a very small office that didn't look like an office, but we got a lot of business done. There were a committee on people searching for exhibitions for annuals. There were people looking for shows for other areas in New York State, Connecticut, all over the place where people could ship their work to into exhibits. And there were people working on grants, and there were people working on traveling shows. And it was just a very exciting atmosphere to hear everybody doing a little job for NAWA and just to try to extend the visual artists that were women in the organization. So, except that this is another one of my pieces that got an award, but it might be the one that, it looks like one that got into the collection at Rutgers, but I'm not sure now. Anyway, the office was in an old building, and I think on the 11th or the 13th floor, and it had a terrible looking desk that looked like it belonged in a factory. And there were filing cabinets all over the place, and it was just one room. So, and we kept trying all these exhibits, and nobody seemed to know who we were, what the organization was, and we didn't have money for publicity to announce the shows. And a lot of people came, but mostly relatives, but we wanted to expose the artists, you know, to have more of a following and people to get to know NAWA. So I called in one of my friends who was a press agent, and she handled the musician Philip Reich. And when she came to see the office, she says, "This does not look like an office that belongs to artists. You have to change the office and make it presentable and make it look arty." And so that I decided that was my project, and we did that. We called in a designer who was an artist from NAWA, and she gave us a color scheme, and they put up the motto with the logo, this very logo that you see down here on the bottom. And it's had our statement. So when you walk into the room, you now saw the statement. This is the National Association of Women Artists. And then on the ceiling were the founders of the organization, the early woman founders' names were up, because Penny Dell, this little lovely lady sitting here, climbed on a gigantic ladder and put up the names. I would hand her the letters, and she would stick them on the frieze along the ceiling. But anyway, so we got the office that looked like an art office finally, and then we found people who had connections with the Rockefellers, and we applied for a grant, and we got that, and I think we were on our way. So I really enjoyed, you know, working through that, and every opportunity I tried to, you know, give opportunities to more of our artists in the organization. So this was one of the shows that I had in the Yeshiva University Museum, which was on 16th Street, and our office was on 14th Street. And when I heard that the curator never heard of the National Association of Women Artists, I said, well, you have to come and see our work. And I organized a show that was called, you know, something like, you don't have to be Jewish to make art, but everybody was invited. It was art on Jewish themes, and it was a great show, and some of the people from the Yeshiva Museum did come to see it. A lot of the people who were on the board wanted to see who their neighbor was, and we had a reception for them, and the work was very good. And so this was one of my pieces that was in an outdoor show that they had. And so there's another slide coming up that's going to show some of the pieces that came in, and we held it in this little office, but the work was beautiful. So this is yeah, what is it called? Art, I think, on Jewish themes or something, right? And so we had fantastic, and all the artists paid for this brochure. It was a 4-page brochure. They all sent their photos in, and each artist got, I think, 25 brochures that they could keep for life. And this also, I think, went into the archives of NAWA when it was shipped to Rutgers. So I was happy to do that for them. And other than that, let's see what else. Now we're ready for the next slide, I think. Yeah, this is just a sampling of some of the works that I did. I had commissions for. This was a menorah for a temple that was made of, I forgot the name of the wood already, but, and this was another one called the Tree of Life, but that spanned 14 feet across 2 walls. So I was proud of that. This was a model that I made, and this was another piece that went into a school. It was a Hanukkah Menorah. And so here's another one. This one is in Teaneck, New Jersey. This one is in Long Island. This one was on the commemoration of the war in Israel. And this one is called Morningstar. And this was supposed to be another for the temple for a, it was supposed to be for the 10 Commandments, but that piece wasn't chosen. So I just liked you to see a sample of some of my work. And now I'm working in from steel to clay. So these are my pieces in clay. And I enjoy doing these, but it's so much different than the steel because it was too malleable and had too many directions to go in. So, and then when you put a glaze on it, that made it even more complicated. So I just like to draw on the clay now. And I think that they're pretty nice. I haven't shown them yet. So you're the first to see them. Other than that, my experience was that there was also an opportunity that I heard about where there was an exhibition in Beijing for women artists all over the world. And we sent out a notice to all the NAWA members. This was for a postcard size piece of art that after it went to Beijing, the show would come back and it would be in the Women's Museum in Washington, D.C. So all of the artists were instructed, that they had to put on their piece, NAWA artist. And I got to see the piece when it came back from Beijing, and they did a very good job of presenting these artistic postcards in the center of the building. And I was very impressed with the show, and now our artists got a chance to show their work out of the country. We also had Dorothy Cochran, who was doing traveling shows. There were people that did traveling sculpture shows. We had a traveling sculpture show in India, and we had other traveling shows in the country. But it was interesting because everybody who was on a committee talked about what they were doing, and we would find out what was happening. Is there going to be a show here? Is there not going to be a show here? And we were trying to figure out, how to arrange our budget so we could afford to do these things. And I think that what has finally happened is that, we took the advice, we made ourselves into an artsy organization. We managed to get a building that had gallery space and gave us more opportunities to show art. And now with the internet, you could show, I'm so impressed with the works that I see that come from NAWA every time you have a show. I think it's just fantastic that we've accomplished all the goals that we really set our hearts on. for the organization. And we just seem to be growing and growing and growing. Some of the other things that we wanted to do and we never did is that we were working on another chapter in Florida, which that was accomplished early on. And I tried to get a chapter going in California. That one didn't work out because the people in California live too far from one another to even come to a meeting. It would take them 3 hours. But when I heard that we now have chapters almost in a few other states, I think that's wonderful news. So I'm very happy with the organization. I love all the people that I worked with in the organization. Everybody was interesting and wonderful to work with and to be with, and very supportive. And I think the organization is doing better than ever with the influence now of the computer and the Zooming and giving the artists so many more opportunities to show their work.
Yay. Yay. I thank you all so much for, your insights into basically almost 5 decades. And that's like more than a third of NAWA's history. And I really think that your insights and your stories are priceless. And I thought that we could have just a little conversation together. And I, as I told you, joined because Dorothy, introduced me to NAWA, and she invited me to an annual luncheon. I wondered how you all heard, and I asked Janet, and Janet told me, a little bit, but I don't yet know how, Dorothy and Bernice joined. So can we have that little sequence again?
There were some artists in Long Island.
If Dorothy, answers, and then Bernice, you hand it over to Bernice, and Bernice, you ask Janet. I'd love to hear those stories. And I don't know how we're doing on time, but I think we're approaching our taping max. So Dorothy.
Well, my story is I had a group of, I called them art mothers. Most of them have passed away now, but at the time I didn't have a big art studio or a big printmaking press, and I worked in a communal situation. And this was in northern New Jersey. And these women would talk all the time and tell about their involvement. And one of the biggest things, they were involved in NAWA. So I would hear all this talk, and they were kind of mentoring and nurturing me and said, you really need to apply with this work that you're doing. This is really great work. And that's how I came to know NAWA. And I was accepted on the first round and jumped right in. So that's pretty much it. And I thank those women to this day. Bernice, how about you?
Well, it was kind of word of mouth. I was in some art organizations with Long Island women. There were many organizations. They don't all exist now. It was kind of local. And some of the members were talking about, going into this show and that show, and they talked about NAWA. And Elsa Goldsmith, I think it was, said I should definitely join that. And I presented an etching. At that time, I had, in addition to paintings, I did etching. I worked at Ruth Leaf's workshop. She had a workshop in Douglaston, and a lot of things. And it was an etching that I presented because you had to show your work. And that's what I sent in, and that was accepted. And I was happy. There were a lot of organizations. Some of them, as I recall, you had to be invited to some. You couldn't just apply. But others, like NAWA, you didn't have to be invited, which is nice. You could apply, and that was good. I was glad that it was open that way, and then you could be juried. I was glad.
Yay. So Janet, What,
how it
tell
happened.
your story.
I think that when we were visiting colleges with my daughter, I saw a show in the library of Sarah Lawrence from the National Association of Women Artists. And I said, oh, these are good artists. I wonder how you get into that organization. So I started to ask questions. That I was studying wood carving with an artist friend, and she says, I said, you ever hear of this group called the National Association of Women? She said, oh yeah, that's a good group. You should get into it. It's very hard to get into. They have tough jurors. I said, well, I'm going to try. So I did. And that's what happened. So I got in. I told you, got in. They gave me an award for my sculpture. Wow, what could be better? So my heart was with this group.
Yay. That's fabulous. So I can't thank you enough for making this program possible. And also I thank Nawa and Natalia and Jill and Biana, and especially Emma for making all of this actually happen in social media time. Anyway, thank you so much. And I have something like here. Thank you for Zooming.